Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. We're going to examine the involvement of Turkish Air Force in the Syrian Civil War. The title says Turkish air-to-air kills, and that will be the main focus, but we are going to start with something else, which I believe is quite significant. On June 22, 2012, a Turkish RF-4E Phantom was flying a mission over the Mediterranean Sea. Let me say that I'm perfectly aware this is not an RF-4, but rather a standard F-4E. When the war in Syria started, Turkey condemned the actions of Assad's government and started supporting insurgent groups. As the war escalated, Turkish involvement was getting more direct. But back to June 22nd, the Turkish Phantom was flown by Captain Gökhan Ertan and Lieutenant Hasan Hussein Aksoy. Officially, the purpose of the flight was radar testing. Its flight path at one point brought it within Syrian airspace. That is one thing that Turkey admits. However, Turkey and Syria don't agree on the details of the flight path and how deep the Phantom was within the airspace of Syria. Both sides released radar snapshots, but let's first take a look at the path as claimed by Turkey. The airplane was flying north of Cyprus at 11:06 a.m. on 21,400 feet. It continued on a northeast course towards Turkish territory. At 11:23, it was on 7,500 feet and it made a southwest turn. It then continued for 90 miles and dropped down to 2,000 feet. This leg put it very near Syrian airspace, but it didn't violate it. The Turkish Phantom then turned northeast towards Turkey, but this time it did violate Syrian airspace, flying very low on 200 feet. It stayed in Syrian airspace for about 5 minutes and then continued on the same course, climbing to 3,000 feet. After that, the RF-4E again turned southwest, flying just outside Syrian airspace. But then, at 11:56, it turned southeast towards it. The airplane was hit by the Syrian anti-aircraft defense at 7,400 feet, and it crashed into the sea, still about 1 mile in international airspace. Both men were killed. One point of contest is what kind of weapon was used to shoot the Phantom down. While Turks don't specify it, if their version is correct, it couldn't have been an anti-aircraft gun, because no such weapon operated by the Syrians has that range. Some sources claim it was an SA-3 SAM system. This weapon, however, has a relatively short range, and the Phantom would have been just outside of its reach. Testing in DCS confirms this, given the exact location specified by Turks. It must have been another system, probably an SA-2, which is older but has longer range. It could have also been SA-5, an extremely long-range system operated by Syria. Bodies of 2 aircrew were found after days of search, and debris of the downed Phantom was recovered from the sea bottom. Syrian radar picture is similar for the most part, but according to them, the Phantom was about 1 kilometer from the Syrian coast when it was hit by AAA. It crashed into the sea about 10 kilometers from the coastline, which is well within the 12 nautical miles of territorial waters. This suggests that the Phantom was probably already in a turn and it continued to fly towards the sea after being hit. That was a bit hard to do in DCS, but you can get the general picture. There is a video which supposedly shows the moment of the shoot-down from the beach, but nothing can really be seen on it. This is probably one of those things that will never be 100% confirmed. The plausibility of Turkish claims that the Phantom wasn't really spying on Assad's forces and that the airspace violation was a result of navigation error is something I'm going to leave you to judge.
والله ليك نزلت 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 يلا حيا
The date is now September 16, 2013. Turkey is still supporting Syrian insurgent groups. At the same time, it's flying very intensive combat air patrols along its border with Syria. 2 F-16s belonging to Squadron 182 were on station in early afternoon. According to Turkish sources, a Syrian Mi-17 helicopter was first tracked at 1:41 p.m., 26 nautical miles from the border. When the helicopter came within 5 miles of the border, a warning was issued.
This is Turkish Air Force speaking on guard. You are approaching Turkish airspace. Change your heading south immediately.
At 2:25 p.m., the helicopter entered Turkish airspace near the town of Yayladag, flying on 14,000 feet. Total depth of airspace violation was about 2 kilometers. The 2 F-16s were vectored to intercept it. Sidewinder AIM-9X is a weapon believed to be used, while the name of the Turkish pilot is unknown. Video footage of the helicopter falling and subsequent wreckage is available on YouTube. Some sources report that 2 crew members managed to jump out of the burning helicopter and parachute safely to the ground. Unfortunately, they were captured by insurgent extremists and executed. The next incident involving Turkish Air Force fighters took place on March 23, 2014. Two Syrian MiG-23s were involved in the fight between pro-government forces and insurgents for Kasab border crossing. Some sources describe the MiG as BN versions, others as MF. According to the Turkish official statement, MiGs were first tracked at 80 miles from the border. Warnings were given, but they continued nevertheless. The final warning was issued at 10 nautical miles from the border. One of the MiGs then turned away, but the other continued and crossed into Turkish airspace at 1:13 p.m. He was then intercepted by an F-16 belonging to Squadron Number 182. Some sources list Squadron 181. The weapon used by the Turkish F-16 is believed to be AMRAAM. The MiG reportedly entered Turkish airspace for about 1 mile, and the wreckage crashed just into Syrian territory. The pilot successfully ejected and was rescued by friendly forces. Syrian official attitude is that no airspace violation ever occurred. The name of the Turkish pilot who scored a kill was not published.
تنقيب 23/3/2014 تم اطلاق طياره. الله اكبر على ايدي احرار الشام. الله اكبر الله اكبر الله اكبر. اسقاط طائره على ايدي حركه احرار الشام الاسلاميه. الله اكبر الله اكبر. وين الزين؟
الله أكبر. إسقاط طائرة ميج. الله أكبر الله أكبر. تكبير. الله أكبر. إسقاط طائرة ميج. الله أكبر. جبل تركمان.
The next kill for the Turkish Air Force was a drone. The incident took place on 16 May 2015. Two F-16s were involved in the intercept, and the target was an Iranian-built Mohajer 4. Mohajer is a family of unarmed surveillance drones developed since the 80s. Not many details are available about this incident. Turkey initially claimed that they had shot down a helicopter. An unknown aircraft entered Turkish airspace and stayed in it for at least 5 minutes. He was then intercepted by 2 F-16s from an unknown squadron, and 2 Sidewinder missiles were launched at it. Drone crashed into Syrian territory. I need to point out that selection of drones in DCS World is very limited, so we are using the only available ones, and they're not necessarily similar to the ones used historically. There was one more drone shoot-down incident which supposedly took place on 16th October 2015. A Russian Orlan-10 drone is believed to have been shot down by Turkish F-16s after crossing the border 3 kilometers into Hatay province. This was not confirmed by Russia, but if it indeed happened, it was an announcement of the most famous air-to-air kill in the Syrian Civil War. But in 2015, the situation in Syria changed when Russians sent their military in direct support of Assad's regime. Russian Air Force launched numerous attacks against anti-government forces, and many of them were focused on the northwest region of Syria, where Turkish-supported groups operated. On 24 November 2015, a pair of Russian Su-24 bombers took off from Khmeimim Air Base and headed northeast. They dropped bombs on insurgent positions in the vicinity of Turkish border, and as you almost certainly know, one of them was shot down by a Turkish F-16. That's the part where Turkey and Russia agree. However, the exact details of the Sukhoi and F-16's flight paths are disputed. Let's first take a look at the Russian interpretation. 2 Su-24s were assigned to patrol near Marat al-Numan on about 5,500 meters of altitude. One of the Su-24s was crewed by Lieutenant Colonel Oleg Peshkov as the pilot and Captain Konstantin Murakhtin as the weapon system officer. After about 20 minutes, they were instructed to drop bombs on some insurgent positions about 5.5 kilometers from the Turkish border. One of the Sukhois passed about 1 kilometer from the southernmost tip of Turkish territory. After making the first bombing run, Sukhois turned left and then came back to make another attack. During the second attack, the Su-24 flown by Lieutenant Colonel Peshkov was hit by a Sidewinder missile launched by a Turkish F-16 from the distance of about 6 kilometers. The Turkish F-16 entered the airspace of Syria for about 2 kilometers in the duration of 40 seconds, after which it turned right and returned to Turkish airspace. Su-24 crashed about 4 kilometers from Turkish border. President Putin called this a stab in the back and accused Turkey of having planned an ambush. The Turkish version is of course different. According to them, Russian airplanes were warned 10 times on guard frequency that they were approaching Turkish airspace and that they should turn south.
Unknown, traffic closing to Humayun. 040, 3rd mile, 234, speaking on that, approaching Turkey, change your heading to south immediately, change your heading to south.
The Suhoi's flight path went across Turkish airspace, which was violated for 17 seconds. A pair of F-16s was then given clearance to open fire. The leader launched an AIM-120C from beyond visual range. This was a difficult shot because the Su-24 was moving perpendicular to the F-16. Pulse Doppler radars have issues tracking targets in that regime, but the missile hit nevertheless. The supposed crash site of the Su-24 also differs in the Turkish version, now being about 2 kilometers south of the border. Both crew members ejected from the Suhoi. Lieutenant Colonel Peshka was apparently killed by insurgent gunfire as he was descending. Captain Murakhtin landed safely. 2 Mi-8 helicopters escorted by a Mi-24 took off from Khmeimim on a combat search and rescue mission. But the operation resulted in an emergency landing by one of the Mi-8s, which was hit by small arms fire that also killed one Russian Marine, Private Alexander Pazinich. The crew of the downed helicopter and Captain Murakhtin were reportedly rescued by a team of Syrian and Hezbollah special forces. Russia responded very strongly by imposing pressure on Turkey and attempting to isolate it internationally. Some media reported that 2 pilots involved in the shoot-down were arrested after the failed coup against President Erdogan, but details about it don't seem to be available. Several years passed after the Russian Su-24 incident. In September 2019, there were reports that Turkey shot down an unidentified drone after it had violated Turkish airspace repeatedly. Some sources say this was another Russian Orlan-10. And in February 2020, things were heating up again. A Syrian Mi-17 helicopter was shot down near Idlib on the 11th of that month. Some insurgent militias claimed responsibility, but several sources claimed that this was in fact an air-to-air kill scored by Turkish F-16s. The Syrian helicopter never violated Turkish airspace. It was attacking insurgent groups supported by Turkey. Now, however, Turkish military was directly involved in the fighting in Syria after some of its soldiers were killed by Assad's forces. This apparently included interceptions of Syrian aircraft attacking Turkey-backed rebels. The weapon reported to have been used here was again AMRAAM launched from beyond visual range. The name of the Turkish pilot or the squadron the F-16s belonged to are unknown. On 1st of March 2020, a double kill was scored by Turkish F-16s, again near Idlib. Turkish Defense Ministry reported that this was a response to the downing of a Turkish Anka-S drone by Assad's forces, which occurred several hours earlier. Turkey also hinted that the Syrian Suhois were trying to attack some Turkish aircraft, but no details were given. The weapon used here is believed to be AIM-120 and no information about pilots or squadrons are known. All 4 Syrian crew members ejected safely and were recovered by friendly forces. The final Turkish air-to-air kill of the Syrian war took place just 2 days later, on 3rd of March 2020. The victim this time was an L-39. This Czech-built light aircraft was used as the standard jet trainer by the Eastern Bloc in many Soviet client states. It also has a secondary attack role in which it was very widely used in the Syrian Civil War by Assad's forces. It is simple and cheap to operate, and there were undoubtedly many qualified pilots in the Syrian Air Force. All these things made it suitable for intensive use during the conflict. The L-39 was shot down near the town of Marat al-Numan, south of Idlib. The Turkish F-16s again used AMRAAM missiles, while details of pilots or squadrons involved in the shoot-down remain unknown. Both pilots ejected, one of them was killed by insurgents, while the other was rescued by friendly forces. I hope you liked the video. Be sure to press the like button if you did. Support the channel on Patreon if you're able to, and keep watching Showtime 112.